This is Solo Travel Talk. Your solo travel advisor is Astrid Clements.
Your solo travel advisor, Astrid Clements, is all about planning ahead. On this episode of Solo Travel Talk, Astrid is talking planning ahead for safety. The U.S. State Department website is a treasure trove of information for overseas travelers. Of course, while the U.S. State Department website is geared towards Americans wanting to travel, non-U.S. based travelers can glean a ton of information as well. We're going to go over all the types of information you can find there. I'm producer Catherine O'Brien. We're here to get the facts, get ready, and get a plan together using the U.S. State Department travel website.
Well, I just start the whole podcast with saying be prepared is really the most important strategy that you can employ to successfully overcome a small crisis or really a full-blown emergency. In my opinion, every solo traveler should prepare themselves by doing pre-trip research so you will know different things that you can do in order to move through a small or large crisis. So, with that said, I want to share one of the best resources for pre-trip information about a destination that you are planning to travel solo to is the U.S. State Department travel website. It is fabulous. And even if you're not a U.S. citizen, now I must say this is geared, and the services they provide are geared to helping U.S. citizens, but they have just a wealth of information on this website, so it can really help anybody who is thinking about traveling to a specific destination. So, and because this information on this website is so thorough, I'm really going to focus this particular episode on the website and what it has to offer, because if something happens, you just need to instinctively think of, after you've done whatever you need to do in the moment, is to refer back to that website. Get on your smartphone or get access to the internet and Google it. It will help you maneuver through what you're dealing with. So, first of all, the how you get to it is your standard Google. You can put U.S. State Department travel and it'll come up. But the URL itself is www.state.gov/travel/. And Catherine, if you would put this on the show notes, I would appreciate it. I'm going to give you some of the hotline numbers, emergency numbers. I'd like you to put that also for the listeners to refer to and write them down, or if you can memorize them, that's even better. And really, while I was preparing for this show, I told my husband, I love doing these podcasts so much because I'm always thinking, if I help other people make their solo travels easier, more exciting, that's very satisfying to me, and that's one of my goals. But also to help somebody be safe and maybe save their life. And that's what I told Pete. I said, you never know, the information that I'm sharing might help somebody who's really in a bad situation. So I'm very happy to do this particular podcast. So I'm going to take the liberty to really go through a lot of these facts so you can hear them for the first time, especially if you've never used the U.S. State Department travel website, so you can just know the breadth of what's there that you can use. It's all good. Go, when you're getting ready for a trip, go to the U.S. State Department website. You'll see it is divided into really three big sections. A big section on travel documents that you need, and it depends on every country has different requirements. So you'll be able to see what you need to go to Ghana or wherever it is. Then it had the resource section is fantastic, and that's usually the section that or that's the pre-planning or trip planning section that you really need to read and get familiar with and make sure that you're implementing what they suggest. And then the last section is the emergency information. And this is basically if there is a crisis, whether it's an individual crisis or it's some type of terrorist or civil unrest or whatever. And they have great information that comes on instantaneously telling you what to do, what not to do. So all of this is very good. Under the resource section, I'm going to start with that because you asked how to prepare. Okay, you've got several subsections or numerous subsections, which I'm going to list them and then I'll go into each one of them somewhat so you'll be familiar with what's on there and some very good information. You've got your travel advisory section. You've got your smart traveler enrollment program, the STEP program. I have talked about this on numerous shows, but I'm going to talk about it again because I can't stress it enough. Travel tips for everyone. Travel tips for older Americans because handicapped travelers or older Americans, they're not used to some of the lack of services or just lack of certain type of amenities that they're used to in the United States or in the developed world. So it's really good information. Then there's a whole section on scams. And scams for particular countries or particular cultures, which I think is very good too because people, especially solo travelers, if you do a lot of solo travel, you'll be much more sharp and aware of, things that just don't really interest you, but somebody's trying to hook you into. But some of these scam artists are really pretty good, and especially if you're a nice, moral, trusting person, you can get hooked into this before you even know it. So it's a good section, and if it's been put on this website, the government is concerned because more and more people have been victims of it. So they're trying to help you not get into that situation. Then also some information about currency exchange rates. Then a whole list, A to Z, all the countries in the world. And within travel to each country, there's just all of this information that I'm telling you about. So it makes it also country specific, which is very good because it's different for obviously different cultures, different cities, etc. And then just a bucket miscellaneous section at the very end. So let's start with the travel advisories. Now, this is, this section you should go to before you even decide you want to go somewhere. Definitely before you book your hotel and your flight. Because if there are travel advisories that are you should know about, you might want to change your destination plans because, the State Department tends to be a conservative and err on the super safe side, but they are giving this information, as I shared, to protect you while abroad, and so you really should think about it. But there are actually 4 different types of travel advisory levels. You've got your number 1, which these are countries where you just need to exercise normal precautions. Basically, the same thing that you do in your hometown. Then the next level, level 2, is exercise increased caution. And see, on the website, each one of these levels, they'll show you what to do or what to prepare for or how to protect yourself in each level of the travel advisory, that they are listing a country in. Then the third level is reconsider your travel. Maybe you really shouldn't travel to this destination now. It might have been safe a year ago, but now you should really understand the climate there. And then the fourth level is do not travel. And let me tell you something. Don't go there unless you really have a reason to, you're willing to take the risk, and you've got a lot of things, the risk taken care of. But with that said, if they say do not travel, I don't go to those places. And I'm going to list some of the countries on the number 4 scale. And I mean, they're self-explanatory to most Americans. But just to kind of give you some ideas, what countries are in number 1, what countries are in number 3, etc. I'm going to go through some of them. And some of them might actually shock you, because you would think they'd be in 3, but they're in 1, and vice versa. And I don't really know what the United States would be classified in, because, this is such a big country, and we have super safe areas, and then we have dangerous areas. So, if you go to the State Department's social media platforms, and I'll talk about this because that's some really good information that is instantaneous. You'll see a lot of comments. Why is this country on this? The United States is, so, so, travel to the U.S. with caution. But it's a wonderful country. Okay, so in the number 1 category, which is exercise normal precautions, you have Bulgaria, which used to be Eastern European communist country that's close to Turkey, close to Russia, etc. But it's considered number 1 in the safe category. Burma. I was very surprised about Burma. Burma's in number 1. Cambodia, wasn't too surprised about that. I thought it might be in number 2, but it's in number 1. Canada, Chile, Austria, Kazakhstan. Now that really shocked me. It did. And it still shocks me. But it's in number 1. And then Ghana. Ghana kind of shocked me too. But, you have to trust the State Department that they are really trying to be very objective about this. So those are some interesting countries in number 1. Then number 2, you have Belgium, which we can understand that because they've had some cells and terrorist type of activities in that country, which is a real shame. Azerbaijan, a place where I have been wanting to go to for the last 5 years. So Azerbaijan is not in 3 or 4, it's in 2. So I feel comfortable. I would go there. Belize, Germany, Turkey, Brazil, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the West Bank in Israel. So those are number 2. And I would have thought maybe some of them could have been in number 3, and some of them might have been in number 1. Okay, then number 3, reconsider travel. British Virgin Islands. Now, let me tell you, there is a lot of pushback on people who commenting on, why is this in number 3? This place is so laid back, blah, blah, blah. The United States is much more dangerous than the British Virgin Islands.
Could that be for weather or like natural disaster reasons, or is it strictly crime or potential for?
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. It deals with services for the traveler. It deals also with support services by the American government for the traveler. It deals with potential safety and crime issues. There are quite a bit. Now, I didn't go to the British Virgin Island country to see the specifics. And what I'm going to do after I go through this, I'm going to highlight Afghanistan, which is in number 4, of course. But I'm going to go through these different preparation sections and kind of give you some of the specifics that they will tell you, like, avoid the airport now, because we have good intel that the airport is a live target. and could be. You see what I'm saying?
So it's like it can be sort of minute to minute. Like I guess with the Virgin Islands example, I was thinking, we had all these hurricanes. So like let's say, for example, a country like Puerto Rico, which we would consider safe because they suffered under the hurricane, it might drop down just because of those services and those other things. It's not because it's necessarily violent or Americans are in danger being there, but it's for other reasons. That's I guess where my question came from.
Right. It's not the criminal element, it's the infrastructure.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Then also Chad, which I'm not surprised, Pakistan. I'm surprised it's on number 3. I would have maybe thought it might be number 4 for American citizens. You see, that's another thing. This is geared towards American citizens. Citizens of other countries, it would not reach these different levels. Burundi, Honduras. I was kind of sad about that because Central America seems to be in this number 3 category. Guatemala's in there. Haiti is in there. This is the reconsider travel. And like I said at the beginning of the show, it might be for reasons that are just temporary. But you need to be aware of it. And then the do not travels. I bet everybody listening could listen. Iran, Iraq, North Korea, Mali. Mali, I was a little shocked, but maybe not. Libya, Syria, South Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, and Afghanistan. I mean, those really are, unfortunately, hotbeds for unrest. And, Americans at this time should not travel there, in my opinion. So, okay, now, like I said, I'm going to use Afghanistan to highlight going through some of these particular categories that the State Department gives great information about, dealing with specific travel destinations, so you'll get a better feel for everything that you need to know before you go. Okay. First of all, the reasons why not to go to Afghanistan. High level of crime, potential terrorism, civil unrest, and armed conflict, basically at any time. Kidnapping. Kidnapping is a very big problem in Afghanistan. Hostage taking, and also landmines. They have a tremendous amount of landmines all over. So, attack targets, they tell you, with little or no warning. Of course, we all know this from the news, and we hear so much about it. Tourist locations, transportation hubs and airports, public gatherings, markets, malls. And also, with all of this potential for something really bad happening, they're the only services they have for U.S. citizens of any kind of assistance is in Kabul, and they're not real wonderful, because the support services that the U.S. government would use in Afghanistan are also questionable, depending on what's going on. So, then, if you decide you want to take the risk and you want to go to countries or destinations in the number 3 or number 4 category, this is what the State Department feels. This is your checklist that you need to do before you go home. First of all, draft a will. And I will say that this checklist really, it sounds a little draconian, but it's pretty good for any travel that a solo traveler would do, because you never know when something will happen on your travel. So if you have this in place, you, your loved ones, family members, everybody will know what to do if something happens to you, or in the event of severe injury or death, what they can do to maneuver through your your personal business issues, etc. So, draft a will is number 1, and let everybody know where it is. Designate insurance beneficiaries. Appoint a power of attorney. Tell loved ones what to do in case you're missing or the event of death. Important document locations, where all this information is. This is also a big one that a lot of people don't think of. Login information.
Yeah.
All your accounts, what your passwords are, your usernames, to have that in, listed out so it will make what they need to do, they can do it easy or much easier. Then also develop a security plan. Like I know when I went to Russia the first and the second time, Russia was not in number 3 or number 4, but being a solo traveler and really being, Russia's in a different category now just because of the recent political tensions that are going on between the United States and Russia, and we've closed embassies and that kind of thing. But the bottom line is I was afraid for my safety somewhat, and I couldn't read the language or speak the language. So I felt like if anything happened, I would be so vulnerable that I couldn't work through it. So I ended up, I was very lucky. I employed a travel coordinator out of D.C. to get me a personal driver and a guide that would stay with me in all my destinations. And it was basically like a personal safety detail in the driver and then the guide itself. And there in Russia, everybody who is in the tourist industry that is official and licensed, they're very well vetted. And you can feel very safe being with them. Or that has been my experience. But the bottom line is I did do that. And I felt extremely safe. And I stayed in fabulous hotels in all of the places. I never was afraid one time. And now I've been back to Russia 4 times. I love it. I hate that now it's probably in the 3 category, which is terrible because Russia is such an interesting place to travel to. But what I'm saying is you can contract and get your own personal safety detail. And in some of these countries that are, you might be uncomfortable or there's a heightened risk, a lot of times those details are not expensive. Do a lot of research and see where you can get this. Like in China, when I was in Beijing, I did not have the driver and the guides lined up before I went. But when I was in Beijing and staying at the Raffles Hotel, which is a wonderful old historic hotel in Beijing, located close to the Forbidden City, I went to the concierge and told them that I would want to do this, that, and the other, and it was too far for me to walk. So they arranged for a driver and a guide, and it had the same feel. I knew the driver was security trained, and the guide was very, very well educated. So I felt very comfortable. They took me to the flea market in Beijing, which is really the biggest flea market in the world on the weekends. It is just so overwhelming. But for a solo traveler and I'm blonde with long blonde hair.
Not blending in.
Yeah. To go traipsing through the flea market in Beijing, it'll be hard for me to communicate. I probably will get fleeced in terms of how much I'll pay for something. I won't know really if something is authentic or not. I could get completely turned around and not know how to get out and never be able to get some, transportation back. A myriad of things could completely make this an emergency situation. So by doing that, I could experience the flea market, and it was a blast. It was a blast, and I liked the guide so much, and the driver. I used him for 2 other days to do other things. So you can actually hire your own personal security detail if you want to. Okay, and that's not just for diplomats or high-level corporate executives. Regular travelers can do that. So, and solo female, travelers can also do that. That's what I'm sharing with you. Then enroll in STEP. I'll talk about that a little bit later more. Also, go ahead and follow or click on follow in the social media world on the State Department's Facebook page and on their Twitter page, and it's called Travel Gov. And it's great because it gives you all of the update warnings or anything going on, or it's just a wealth of information. Now, it might not be specific to where you are, and that's why you need to be in STEP. But the bottom line is it keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world, and it's very good information. Okay, then, they also have a crime and safety report. So in this Afghanistan section, it will give you information about crime and safety or the latest report on what's going on. So you can kind of get a feel for the crimes that are happening and, do's and don'ts in terms of safety, etc. And also, before you leave, they talk about making contingency plans or having some kind of contingency plans in case of an emergency. Now, this is kind of far out to think about that, but you kind of want to think, what would I actually do if something went wrong? Get back to the hotel, first of all, contact your relatives and tell them, look, something's going on. I'm going to stay in contact with you unless, the internet goes down. But get back to your hotel the best way you can, the safest way you can, and then get with the hotel's concierge in the management of the hotel and begin to work through what they suggest. If it's a minor crisis that will blow over in a day or two, you might have to adjust your activities. But if it's a big crisis, then I'm going to go into the emergency things and how you can work with the State Department to get you safely back at home. But you kind of have to think about that before, so it doesn't, if something happens, you're just not like, oh, God, I'm going to die.
Yeah, stunned. You have at least the first step that you're going to take.
Yes, exactly. Okay, then some more information, specific information on the Afghanistan page. They give you specific travel alerts, like I talked about the airport. The airport is a current target. So when you fly in there, if you decide to go, know that they are saying something could happen in this airport at any time. They suggest carry alternative communication devices, such as a satellite phone or a handheld radio, even a personal tracking device. Put it on your body. Your passport has to be valid 6 months before you travel there and 6 months afterwards. And this is becoming more and more routine everywhere. It used to didn't matter, but they are insisting that this happen, and I guess it's just basically they want to make sure that your passport is valid, etc. Visas are required to go there, which you can probably understand, and you cannot get them at the airport. Many countries who require visas, like Egypt, you can get once you land. But there are other countries like India, etc., Vietnam, that you have to get the visas in place in your passport prior to leaving. So they'll tell you exactly, what type of visa you need. Then there has to be a blank page in your passport. That used to not be so important, but certain countries, they want a whole blank page. And if you don't have one, you never know. You get there, you don't have the blank page, and they don't want to stamp it on something. In certain places, and I hate to say this, if you're a woman solo travel in certain places, you might get more pushback than you can imagine. So I just, when it says on the State Department, have this, do it. Just don't question it, or don't take the chance. Then in Afghanistan, as in many countries that were either former communist countries or countries that have more authoritarian governments, they require you to register with the International Foreign Relations Ministry when you get there. It's basically, well, some of them call it's within the police department or of the city or whatever. But like I remember the first time I went to Dubai, within 3 days I had to go register at the Ministry of International, and I had to sit down, fill out papers. They took a picture of me, scanned my eyes, the whole thing, and I actually got a little, like an identification card. Yes, so that's very important. Make sure your vaccines are up to date. They might question you, I wanted to know if your polio vaccine, whatever. They specifically say polio for Afghanistan. You're only allowed to bring $20,000 into the country or leaving with $20,000 cash. No more than that amount of money, or it can be confiscated. Then they give the embassy or the consulate locations, the phone number, emergency numbers, fax, email address. Write all this down. I mean, I'm a big proponent of having a journal and having all kinds of information in it. Your things you want to do, address of your hotel, your flight information. If you lose your phone with it or your copies of it or anything, you still have it somewhere.
Yeah, an offline source.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's a lot of information, too, about U.S.-Afghanistan relations in terms of political, etc. And that might be a little dry to you, but go ahead and read it. I mean, you're going to, if you decide to go there for whatever reason, you should at least be familiar with some of the history of the interaction between the two governments, because there are perceptions in there. There are things in there that you will learn that will benefit you once you are in that country, that you wouldn't actually know if you didn't read it. So, you might not be interested in it, but I would read it. Then they have a whole section, like I said, on safety, specific safety and security information for Afghanistan or for whatever country you want. It says, number one, no province in Afghanistan is immune for violence. Extremely high risk of kidnapping. The past terrorist incident, they had one, they blew up there was a suicide bombing near the Kabul Parliament. I mean, these suicide bombings, those are some of the biggest threats in those really risky countries. Also, they talk about demonstrations and riots and where what areas you should avoid. And I mean, I must say, one time when I was in Russia, they did have some kind of issue that some of the people were demonstrating about, and we were just informed, don't go around there. And everything was A-okay all around everything that we were doing. And if you just avoid that area, and that happens a lot. You'll see on the news, and I know my mother was, you're okay, you need to come home, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, it focused on maybe even several little blocks. But in the news, it's like, oh my gosh, the city's under siege. So, but you'll know that. Then communications in Afghanistan, mostly landlines still. And bad, bad roads. I mean, you can't get from point A to point B. So I'm telling you, I mean, if you want to go to Afghanistan, it's going to be as bad as rough as it gets. Cell phone service, very patchy. And they turn it off a lot. Or people will jam the cell towers. So, us who are so used to smartphones and cell phones to be our assistant, it's really non-existent, or you can't rely on it at all in a place like Afghanistan. Like I said, they also suggest bring alternate types of communication, satellite phone. Now, I've never done anything like that. Handheld radios. I do have like a little, what do you call that, ham? It's not a ham radio, but it's a radio. If I'm going somewhere where I'm not totally I have this radio that I can get on different bands, and it's just small. I bought it through National Geographic. It's excellent, and you might want to do that. And then, of course, the personal tracking device now. Now, I don't know how well it will work with the cell towers or whatever, but they suggest doing that, and I would do that if I went there. Okay, don't buy counterfeit goods. Listen, don't buy counterfeit goods anywhere you go. It could be tempting, but don't do it, because you could either get nabbed in the country, or when you're coming back to the United States, it could get ugly. They also, the last thing on the safety security, they give you the emergency number that you can just, call if your phone can go through. Okay, then local laws and special circumstances. Now, there's so many specific laws that are different in certain areas than others, and it's usually going to probably involve a lot of money to get out of it, if you can get out of whatever has happened. Committing a crime, even if you don't know you're committing a crime, is a crime, and if you're caught, you're going to get punished. You must carry your passport with you at all times. If you don't have your passport, your physical passport, because there are a lot of places where if you just have a photocopy of it, they'll go and they'll see it's you on the thing, and they'll say, okay, no problem. But in Afghanistan, you got to physically have it on you. Then you can't take photos of military installations or personnel. That's pretty routine in that type of country. Drug possession, I mean, it's over if you get caught with that. If you're arrested, you need to contact the embassy immediately, because things can, you're totally you're going to lose control of what's happening to you. Also, unmarried sex is forbidden there. This is a Islamic country. They obey Sharia law. And it's severe. So you can't be spending the night with your significant other if you're not married, or if you meet somebody in Afghanistan, you fall in love, and you're not married. I mean, this is against the law. Also, the Islamic culture and their religion, they dress, or they specifically. There's a lot of emphasis on proper dress for women, being modest, etc. So when you go to any of these countries that they follow Sharia law, you really need to pay attention to what you're wearing. The women, they need to cover their arms, their collarbones, and their waistband. Your shirt or whatever needs to go over that. Your hair must be covered. So you can just take a pashmina and wrap it around if you don't want to wear the complete hijab or anything like that. I never have done the hijab, but I did buy an abaya. I did buy the face coverings when I was in Dubai, but I never really wore it, because my guides were saying it's okay just so you dress conservatively. But they did tell me, always have your pashmina. And when you're going into certain places, you put it over your hair and your neck, and you can wrap yourself, a little bit more. And then if you go into some of the holier places, they will give you an abaya. So, and Dubai is much more open. I mean, Afghanistan is not. But that's very important that you respect their conservative dress standards, because that can put you in harm's way. Okay, then they have a whole section on LGBTI rights. It's very good. You should read that if that is something you're concerned about. Travelers with disability information. But just partial disabilities can be very difficult and can cause a crisis. Well, they give some good information about this. Banking information. It says this country is really mostly all cash. So you don't expect to be able to use your credit card. Now you can. There are places in Kabul that you can use it, and really it. But don't rely on it. ATM machines, not that much. But if you do use it, MasterCard and Visa only. No American Express, anything else like that. And then they have also import and export restrictions, which I won't go into, but it basically talks about how that relates to customs, etc. Now, the next section, which some of it might be common sense, some of it you kind of already know, but some of it you might not have thought about. And that one little thing can be the thing that gets you out of Dodge. Okay, so health while traveling, and this is really good. And they go through, each country and what you should do in terms of what vaccinations you should have, how the hospitals are, private clinics, all kinds of information that a U.S. traveler needs to know when traveling in that country that deals with the healthcare system and your health and staying healthy while traveling. Okay? So first, check with your healthcare provider to see if they have coverage really outside the United States. So, and I've done this many times with Blue Cross, and they'll tell me, and I'm thinking, okay, I believe you, but do I really believe you? And I'm nothing against Blue Cross, because they have been a very good health care provider for me when I need it every now and then. But the bottom line is, there are other ways you can solve this problem, and I'll go into that. Next is the U.S. Embassy will not pay and cannot pay your medical bills. So if something happens, you have to have a way to pay for what you need. Also, U.S. Medicare does not pay for overseas medical care there.
I bet that's one that people don't
They
know.
don't know that. They don't know that. They just assume that will happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Supplemental insurance. This is what you have to have, gang. I mean, whenever you travel outside the United States, you really should have some kind of medical insurance. And that's for services as well as the of what they call medvac, or evacuation services, where they take you out in a private jet that has got all kinds of medical. It's just like EMS with a jet that can get you to a safe country with a very high level of hospital support, quickly stabilize you, and then get you home. Can be enormously expensive, but these policies are great. So that's how you deal with having money. If you have the policy, they know they can access it, then you have to get the cash, but eventually when you get home you can get reimbursed for the service. So they also give a list of clinics and hospitals that have med evac services. Now, not all of them have it. There might just be one. It's probably only one in Kabul, but I don't remember exactly where it was. I didn't write that. I didn't get that specific. Okay. Then they say the medical services there are considerably low or way below U.S. standard. That's one of the scariest things can happen to you if you have a medical issue. You know, I mean, I know I'm getting really kind of, but you have to think in terms of, you know, how would I handle something if something like this happened to me? Pill bottles and written prescriptions, they suggest not only bringing a written prescription from your doctor, and usually a letter, but bring your pill bottles too. Communication is not easy, and say they can't read your doctor's writing, or there's just something that, you know, and that you can't get your meds or whatever. And then like I said before, up-to-date recommended vaccinations that you should have. And you should know this, that some vaccinations you have to have well in advance of your trip. You can't just go a month ahead of time and get the vaccination. So, and if you don't have it, this can prevent you, well, I don't know if it can prevent you totally from entering the country, but the bottom line is if something would happen and you would contact something like this, it would be a tragedy. So, you know, read all this and know that you got all your ducks in a row before you even book the flight. That's what I'm trying to say, is you need to know this before you decide to go somewhere. Okay, travel and transportation information. These are some of the things that you should prepare for. And I used Afghanistan because it's a do not travel destination list, but a lot of it, what was on this list, it does show you all this good information that they deal with for any country that does really prepare you very well for traveling anywhere and helps you be prepared to deal with a crisis if it happens.
Wow.
I know. I struggled with whether just to give you the basics and move on, but I said, no, I'm going to go through this because you never know. That one little morsel of information might be this what saves you from something really bad.
Well, and I think that really the point is that you're illustrating what types of information are there. So that we've already heard that if there's LBGT information that you need, it's available on the State Department website. If you have a disability, there's information for you. So it's like it seems like they've been very thoughtful about the kinds of resources that they're providing to people who go to the website.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. It is really wonderful. I mean, I must say, this is the U.S. government ensuring or caring about their citizens when they travel abroad, and it's a great service.
At the very least, it's like a good place to start to make sure that you're thinking about some of the things that we are suggesting that they think about.
Yeah, because you might not think about it at all. You don't know that it could be something that is very important.
Well, we all have a little bit of homework to do, some reading that we can all get on the U.S. State Department travel website. While you're online, why don't you go over to astridtravel.com. Astrid has an amazing packing list for you. Keeping on that planning ahead theme, the packing list is on the homepage right there, ready to download. Just provide your email address and you can download the packing list right away. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify. We love our subscribers. We love people who give us a rating. We love having 5-star reviews. Thank you very much to everybody who's been reviewing Solo Travel Talk. Stay safe, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time on Solo Travel Talk.
Thank you for listening to Solo Travel Talk. Follow Astrid on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. To learn more about Astrid or Solo Travel Advisors, visit our website, astridtravel.com.